This is the session on telling the story of climate mobility. And we will actually start this session with some stories of climate mobility that we have collected through our recent work in the Greater Caribbean region. So every time we work in a region, we start with data collection, with modeling projections, but we also start with collecting the stories of locations and communities that have been impacted by climate change. And so we make an effort to not only collect data, but also to document the stories of the places where we go. And we have two of these short videos here today that we would like to show. One from Jamaica, and the other one from Suriname. Two quite different contexts, but both heavily impacted by climate change already. And so we'll hear short testimonies from how people in those two locations are experiencing the impacts of climate change in their lives. So if I could ask our colleagues to please start the video, and we'll see first off the situation in Jamaica.
I am Reverend Tommy Lee. I am a pastor. I am a farmer and also an electrician. I am a husband and a father. And I am from the community of Beacon, Treasure Beach, St. Elizabeth, Jamaica.
And all my life you have been faithful. So
Well, what happened here is we were being affected by Hurricane Beryl. She came and she devastated this entire region. It was really a horrible experience, and especially to see my two little daughters, have to be experiencing the hurricane. It wasn't one of the greatest moments, for me as a dad. Stand outside. Stand outside. Looking gone.
This was a very massive hurricane.
Yes, massive.
Very, very massive hurricane.
The damage here was very bad. We have lost the roof of our church, and we have also lost the roof of our home. The house wasn't built to put on a concrete roof. So we cut out the walls, cut out the corners, put in steel and cast in columns. And we had to dig it to the foundation and cast in those columns, and strengthen the house in that area, so that we were able to put on a concrete roof on the top. So the concrete roof is on now, so we are well on our way in the rebuilding process to be back in our own space. I most look forward to, just being at home, nowhere like your home, but just your space, where you have your little privacy, with your family. So we have been living here for the past 8 years. So this is where my daughters call home. My daughters, they at times will keep asking me, Daddy, when will we go back home? When will things go back to normal? And we'll have to be reassuring them that, just trust the process, the work is being done. So soon, we'll be back home, because they really want to come back in their own space. It is said that the warmer the water is in the Caribbean, and if a storm develops then it will be more disastrous. And that is one of the fear, because what we are saying is not if another storm or another hurricane should come, but when. Before Beryl came, we had cucumbers, we had beetroots at that time planted. And when Beryl came, Beryl destroyed the tree plots of area that we have planted with those vegetable crops. We supply the entire island of Jamaica on a wide scale. The entire island of Jamaica feels, when we are being affected. After Hurricane Beryl, everything skyrocketed. You have to be paying $200 to charge your phone. Ice was like gold now, $100 per pound. It wasn't, favorable for us as the consumers. To be honest, based on my belief, I don't think there is going to be a reverse with the climate changes, but we can take much better care of it, and slow the process. We can't stop the process, but we can slow the process, with what's happening where climate change is concerned.
Me not no sun not touch me, and the breeze a blow and me a sweat. I still hot like fire. And me say, my God, me say, then what else can I do? If me dey under the shade of the tree, no sun not touch me, the breeze a blow hard, and me still a feel the heat and me still a sweat.
It's a little hard watching this now, knowing that they just had another massive hurricane. To be honest, I don't know if Tommy Lee was okay and his family was okay. We will now see, do we have another video? Yeah, the situation in Suriname.
Voilà. Ik ben kapitein Strijder. Ik ben van Klaaskreek. Dit is district Burgopono. En dit is Assigron. Dit is het grondgebied van Assigron. Dit is mijn kostgrond. Ik ben hier gekomen om te planten. Ik plant cassave, zoete cassave. Het planten bij ons in het binnenland, dat is voordeel en dat zijn we gewend. Dat hebben we gewoon van oudsher meegenomen. Toen wij ons vrijheid hebben gezocht in het bos, is dit ons, laat me dat even zo grof, dit is onze Albert Heijn. Dit is onze supermarkt waar wij eigenlijk ons leven gaan halen. We hoeven niet te gaan kopen, onze vruchten, groenten en alles kunnen we gewoon uit onze kostgrond halen. Maar de hele dagen gaat het zo moeilijk met het weer, met het klimaat. Dat dit baart ons zorgen. Ja, ja, mogen. Nou, het weer zelf, wat allemaal het weer doet. Dat is eigenlijk voor landbouw funest. Dat is voor ons funest. Kijk, deze ananas, die staat al een jaar hier. Dat is ananas. En eigenlijk had hij al een konnemol moeten geven dat de vruchten uitkomt. Maar door de hitte kan het helemaal niet gebeuren. En u ziet, die bladeren van, kijk, de onderste is helemaal geel. En dat hoort gewoon niet. Dat moet gewoon groen zijn. Dus gewoon zorgelijk. Van volgend jaar tot dit jaar toe is duidelijk dat de oogsten flink achteruit gaan. Flink achteruit ook. Vorig jaar was er veel zon. En zo tegen januari kregen we ontzettend veel regen, dat hier helemaal onder water zat. Dat is vernietiging van je gewassen. Dit soort hitte is wel ooit geweest. En dat is in de buurt van in de 40er jaren. Het heeft een volle jaar geduurd. Noemen ze toen het jaar van de rode zon. Dat heeft echt een hele jaar geduurd. Geen productie, niks. Maar dat heeft niet zo lang geduurd. Was maar voor een jaar. En nu krijgen we dat altijd. Het is continu. Maar Paramar heeft natuurlijk een methode om toch wel voor te zorgen dat ze eten hebben, dat ze groente hebben. Dan zijn wij genoodzaakt. Als een mevrouw met 5 kinderen in huis, dan gaat die persoon, dan pakt hij de bus morgens en 200 tot 250 SID moeten betalen om naar de stad te gaan. Met misschien nog geen 500 op zak. En daar gaat hij groente kopen. En dan betaalt hij weer 250 om naar Klaasgeest te komen. En dan gaat hij maar groente voor 100 SID halen. Dat is niet voldoende. Dat is helemaal niet genoeg. Maar dat zijn de gevolgen van de climate change. We kunnen makkelijk leven. Ja, we kunnen makkelijk leven. Ik ben bang voor de komende generatie. Dat ze een behoorlijk slecht zullen hebben. Of dat ze gedreven worden om weg te gaan. Ergens anders. Waar het leven voor hun een hel zal zijn. Zo triest zie ik de toekomst. Voor mijn mensen.
Racinho! Ya tapé!
Is overheating and doesn't want to cooperate with us. We'll try again at the end of the session. Maybe it will give us another chance because we have some really nice stories there. And I would like to invite our panelists up and my colleague Andrea Milan, who will moderate this panel. We have with us Kato Evecchia, Climate Youth Mobility Fellow from Tuvalu, and Chiamaka, also our Climate Mobility Fellow from Nigeria, Diana Hopman, who's joining us from Berlin with the Climate Mind, and our moderator will be Andrea Milan with the GCCM.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm sorry also from my end for the technological issues. Not the first ones, unfortunately, in all the pavilions. We're very lucky today to have a very distinguished panel. So the idea of the session today is one of the things that we have learned, we as the Global Center for Climate Mobility, we have excellent fellows like Chamaka and Kato, and we've been working with them towards a literacy program and towards how can we, as a center, we've worked for many years, produced over 50 knowledge products, and we thought, how can we produce knowledge products that resonate more, that can be absorbed by the general public? And one of the things we learned from them is the importance of thinking beyond the research products and the data products, and really think about products that resonate much more, especially with the youth. And so we have the pleasure today to hear from Janna Hopman, who is a psychologist by training, but also has embarked on what I believe is a fascinating journey of really digging deep into the psychology of climate change negotiations, and definitely much more, and you can say a few words about it. And then we have Kato, who has kindly agreed to sing for us, and over the past 4 years as our youth fellow first, now the Climate Mobility Fellow, I think he's always pushed us to get out of the panel conversations and express ourselves in different ways, and we've always loved his contributions. And we have Chamaka, who has also been pushing us to really think about the importance of, when we think about knowledge, of starting from the communities, of really co-creating science with the community. So we'll hear these three very complementary perspectives, and I look forward to the session. And I would like to invite, in fact, Kato to sing a song for us. Thank you.
Low. Sorry, apologies. Before I start the song, I'd like to introduce the name of the song, the meaning of it, and why am I doing it. So this song is called Alomai. Alomai means paddle your canoe, and it means like paddle home. Alomai Dovaka, Tefenua. Thank you very much. Oh, one more. This song is a cover. It's from my cousin, one of a climate champion as well, who wanted to make it here, and he's a singer as well. But he asked me if I can perform his song and share the culture with you, so that you know what Tuvalu is like. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Taylors.
Thank you very much, Kato. We should have you close the sessions because it's so difficult to speak after such a wonderful, wonderful performance. And I've had the privilege to share with you travel across all islands of Tuvalu in April, and I hope many, many people get the chance to do that in the near future because it's truly a unbelievable country. And so on our panel today, as mentioned before, we have two other panelists, and I would like to start maybe from you, Yana. As I was mentioning before, you work on the psychology of climate negotiations, and there are perhaps two issues on which we would like to hear from you. One is, so when we talk about storytelling and resonating emotionally, maybe what's your perspective on this issue as a psychologist? And maybe another interesting aspect to it is that you're trying to bridge quite different worlds, right? And I've always appreciated that you are really trying to open up and build bridges. And so we'd also love to hear what has been your experience so far trying to bring different, completely different backgrounds, profiles, perspectives together. We would love to hear from you. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I really appreciate being here at COP30 and the side event on the very, very important question, how do we actually talk about something that tangible like climate mobility? And how do we talk about it? How do we frame the stories in a way that it's supporting dignity and human rights? So with my background as a psychologist, I'm very interested in the human side of things. So not only what does negotiations really mean to humans and how can we foster collaboration by understanding that we're all humans, a lot of probably around 50,000 humans here that in the end will make decisions and will come to consensus. But my background generally is really understanding the human part of the climate crisis. So firstly, understanding how we perceive the climate crisis and how our cognition works. So how do we process climate crisis information? How do we feel inside in the middle of the climate crisis? And then also, how do we mobilize people to act? So this is very much my perspective, and I always try with our work with Climate Mind to really foster and strengthen the idea that we're all change makers, we're all decision makers, and despite having such a huge crisis like the climate crisis, in the end, it's the individuals who come together as a group who will make the change and who are already doing the changes and have always done the changes since years and decades. So on the perspectives of psychology on climate mobility, I think what is very crucial is to understand here is that we can always try to talk about issues and subjects and all that, but in the end, these are human experiences. So the story should be about humans. They should be about not only about the human suffering, which we tend to present and showcase a lot, but they should be about the dignity and the agency of human beings. So they should be about the choices that are made, about, as we call it here, enabling positive adaptation stories. So the change agents and the agents to actually make choices of whether people want to move and how they move, and not only talk about devastation and showcasing pictures of buildings, but actually really making clear that it's all about human dignity that is affected and that is really at stake.
Thank you very much. And our third panelist today, Chamaka, our Climate Mobility Fellow, originally from Nigeria, now based in Germany. Chamaka, you were also on our last panel, and I think this is a very interesting continuation of that discussion. You really push us to think about the importance of thinking beyond just knowledge and data on a paper that goes through a peer review and really going beyond. So what do you think is key for stories that really, resonate with people and really help us make sure that change happens? And we have also that, if you want that microphone. Should be.
Thank you very much, Andrea, for that question. Why stories? Why are they so important? So I took some first-year migration students, master's students, on a class recently on climate mobility and climate justice. And it was a typical cold morning in Germany. The students were cold, disinterested, and we're like, okay, what are we about to hear? And then I started with playing a podcast to them on climate justice, on spoken word, and then tried to show them pictures of vulnerable communities bearing the brunt of climate impacts. And I noticed the subtle change in their postures. Suddenly they were engaged. Suddenly they were sitting up. There was this energy that came back to the room. And so stories are compelling. They bring a human element. They make things that we consider abstract very real to us, and that's something really powerful. Over the week, we've been talking about climate justice, advocating for climate action, climate mobility, and at some point, it might seem just like a rhetoric or like you're going through the motions. But stories have a way of bringing to the fore the devastating impacts of climate change on communities. And so this very crucial aspect, this foregrounding of human experiences, of the vulnerabilities, of the unjust dimensions, of the way it affects people, is something powerful, and that's where storytelling becomes imperative. And another beautiful thing about storytelling is it gives you this leeway. So some people are able to communicate their stories through whether videos, whether podcasts, whether music, and it has a way of democratizing knowledge production. And so through stories, you could share your perspectives, resilience, strategies, adaptive capacities, indigenous knowledge. They can be communicated through stories. And so I use the analogy of the students in my class to show, just for a starter, what stories do to us. They bring that human dimension. They bring a face to the abstract, to things that we consider very far away. They make it imperative. They make it compelling. And that's why we have stories. And then for youth, we have a very crucial role to play, because youth have a way of translating their realities through, what they are living through. They use stories to somehow bring it to light, right? And they also use creative methods. And so youth have this role to play, because they can work with communities most affected to create compelling stories, to amplify perspectives, to amplify vulnerabilities. And through that, we can foreground the agency of community members. We can highlight their perspectives, their vulnerabilities, their challenges. We can amplify it to a global stage. It can influence policies, and stories are just the beginning. It raises awareness. Some of you entered here because you were listening to Kato's music, and his music about the stories about his homeland, it's compelling. That's the heart dimension. It brings that to the fore when all of a sudden we are talking about the technicalities. Those stuff we do and they are routine, but there's something evocative about stories, about art, about, stories that I consider really compelling, and I hope that I have successfully communicated that. Thank you.
Thank you. And before opening up to the question we may have from the floor, I just have a question to you all, and I'm interested in the different perspectives. As you can see, we are surrounded by the word positive. And one of the things we see, I think all of us, is this is a topic that in a way, if we look at 20, 25 years ago when it really started becoming an issue, it was really portrayed as the human face of the climate crisis. So when people heard climate change, now I think everybody's familiar. But some years ago, it sounded like this very far away distance. And at the same time, this element of the drama, of all the pictures of people with water until their knees, I mean, it's an important element and it captures our attention. But my question to you is, how can we tell stories that resonate with people, that catch their attention, but also bring the positive? Because there's a beautiful story of mobility. Tuvalu is a great example. It's a country where many people go to Australia, go to New Zealand, go to Fiji, and then they come back. And even when they don't come back, they maintain very strong connections. So it's not a story of a country that cannot survive on their land. It's a story of very resilient people. So how can we bring the positive element of climate mobility in our stories? We can go in this direction.
I think what is very interesting from a psychology point of view, firstly to understand, is that normally what gets our attention are negative, alarmist messages. So that's the reason why news normally is built in this way. It really easily catches our attention. That is important for a certain phase in behavior change that we need to go through at the beginning, of course, understanding about the climate crisis, realizing how important it is. We need to talk in an alarmist or in a way that we actually raise awareness. But what is very important to actually activate people for taking action. The negative stories, they're not enough. So we need to move from negative or unpleasant emotions to actually activating agency to connect positive emotions, pleasant emotion with a solution, with possible approaches, with possible alternatives, and concrete actions that we can take. Hello? Yeah. So to catch attention, we can use kind of drastic stories to actually catch the attention. But I think what is maybe even more compelling or helpful at these times is to actually make the reality very, very clear. That's hello? Yeah. Okay. So I think when we really tell stories that are not only alarmist and not only talk in a negative way about the problems that we have, but actually talk about encounters, talk about turning points that really relate to our heart, I think that can be also a very interesting starting point of getting the attention of people. And then positive, of course, as I said, in the way of people are resilient, people are taking action with dignity, people are following their own life choices. And I think showcasing that, I think, is really important as well.
Thank you. So for Tuvalu's story of mobility is a very sensitive storytelling. So Tuvaluan people, we don't want to move away from our home. If you don't know Tuvalu is located in the middle of the South Pacific. I believe when I ride my bike from one end to the other, end, it's like 1 hour. That's how small our capital is. And when there's storms or family needs to move, we cannot move anywhere because Tuvalu is very small, and for us to move to another country is it's very hard for us because moving to another country is we are connected to the seas, we connected to our land. In meaning like this, if when I have a son in the future, and I want him to teach how to fish, I myself I love to fish. I would tell him the where am I going to fish, how, using what materials, and these knowledge and skills were passed down by our generation, by our ancestors. By our ancestors. And I would love to show my child, you know, Dad used to fish over there, and he used this method. Your grandpa used to fish over there and used those methods. So, for an example, if I was to move to, where have I been? Berlin, to Germany. I don't know what am I gonna use my skills there for. You know, it will be so hard for me to move somewhere and not use my culture. One problem of it as well is that I'm gonna lose my culture. I have to learn Germany language, and I have so that I can communicate with with the people there. So it is very hard for us to move, and it is for us to stay in Tuvalu is very important. And our stories from our generation, write it in books. We tell them in stories. And these stories are the same stories I hear and I will pass down to my children in the future. With music. Music is a way for me to connect people. I've done a lot of music in Tuvalu. I love to share them, and it's an icebreaker for me so I can talk about my country, because mobility in Tuvalu is a very sensitive topic. With music, you hear the style, you hear the beat, and I believe you hear the language is very unique for you, for music. If I go to Colombia or another country and use the same music, I'm sorry, those the locals will not understand the music. In order for me to be welcome in that place, I need to change my music, change my styles, and also change the language so that I can be accepted in the community. But I don't want to do that because I'm a Tuvaluan and I would love to stay in Tuvalu. And my young people are very passionate of making sure that our children stays in Tuvalu. One time when we were traveling with Andrea to the outer islands of Tuvalu, and I have the privilege of interviewing my elders. Do you want to go or do you want to stay? And they said they want to stay. We want our children to stay. We want our grandchildren to stay so that they can learn what our ancestors tells us. For me, being here in the Amazon in Brazil, it's an amazing thing. I get to learn new cultures, and also I want to show the culture of Tuvalu. Cultures in every island, every countries are beautiful and they're unique, and they deserve to to stay there. And I believe this is why I'm fighting for my people to stay in Tuvalu, and that is the story of my people. Faftailasi, thank you very much.
I think, Andrea, you talked about how can we tell stories that focus positive adaptation journeys. And I think there are two things, intentionality and reflexivity. I think there is typically the predisposition when we talk about climate impacts, climate mobility in this regard, vulnerabilities, to spotlight the emergencies, the dreary pictures, because they evoke attention, and because maybe they make people sit up and pay attention to these issues. But the danger with that is it tells a single story about regions affected. Kato just made us understand here that the story of Tuvalu is a story of resilience, a story of appreciating the culture, the heritage, and not necessarily the story that we often see of an island that is close to being submerged. And so I think in order to to do better, to change that paradigm, to emphasize positive adaptation journeys, it's important for actors to be intentional about this narrative, this single story that has probably been told time and time again, to be reflexive in that, even though that is the story that jumps out, to engage intensively with communities to understand their perspectives, to highlight their resilience, their adaptive strategies, their stories that are beautiful, that are grounded, that foreground their agency. That's important. And so that's why, this perspective of intentionality matters, so that we pay attention to the stories we tell, because they feed into the narratives and perceptions, and stories in this regard are very powerful. And so intentionality, reflexivity, I believe will go a long way in really spotlighting, emphasizing, and redirecting attention really to positive adaptation journeys. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the three of you. And I know it's been a long day, it's been a long week, but we have a few minutes if anybody has any question that you would like to raise. I'm really thankful for every one of you, because again, I know it's been a very long week. So I see a first hand up, and if anybody else wants to ask a question, you can raise a hand. Sarah.
To be honest, that it's more a comment or a reflection. I think what struck me, so I'm coming to this discussion on climate and how it affects human migration from the migration side. And what I realized coming into this conversation is like, I think there's actually a much more human conversation going on in the climate space, because the conversation about migration is anchored in the larger picture of climate justice. The whole question of human dignity, heritage, culture, what does it mean to preserve your identity, is kind of foregrounded in a way that it is not in the migration discussions. Migration policy discussions is all around like, how can we meet labor market needs? How can we give protection to people who have been... So for me, it's actually very refreshing to see how the conversation in the climate space has foregrounded some of these human dimensions that I feel like in policy discussions otherwise often kind of, fall off the cliff. And I think even when we speak about things like modeling projections or, other kind of like hard data, my experience is that at the end of the day, it comes down to storytelling again. So you can have a very complex AI model doing some complex calculations, but at the end of the day, you have to be able to explain to people why the model is spitting out these projections, right? You have to be able to make a story out of it. So I think oftentimes there's this like belief that numbers and statistics will somehow save us. So if we have attribution science and we can really show that this is down to climate change, I think at the end of the day, it will still come down to like, how convincingly can we make a story out of those numbers to convince anybody? And my third observation is just, and this goes a little bit to the positive stories, I think we have to acknowledge that we're in a very poisonous information environment, right? Like what we get fed all day for the most part, is very toxic to our societies. It's toxic to our families, it's toxic to our friendships, and it's toxic to our societies and our democracies. So somebody was telling me about the, Al-Shabaab in Somalia poisoning wells. This is poisoning a well. It's our communal well that is being poisoned by people. And so I really think thinking strategically around media and looking at the media channels that are trying to do the right thing is a very important, ally in this space. And we're not going to obviously change channel, cable news and social media platforms from today to tomorrow. But I really think that, if we just think like, oh, we need to make more positive TikTok videos, I think it's not going to cut it, because TikTok itself is not helpful. Thanks.
Good afternoon. My name is Hajat Sebiala. Ajati green, you see my color green. I do a lot of environment work. I'm from Uganda. However, I had never heard of this Global Center for Climate Mobility until I came to COP. I don't know, are you only in one place? Are you global actually? You reach out to all countries? You reach out to Uganda or not? Number two, I'd like to thank you. This is the only pavilion where I have been, and we have free tea. People are lining up for good tea this time. Anytime is free tea. So I'd like to commend this. However, in one paragraph, sorry, I stepped in late, but just tell me the major objective of the Global Center for Climate Mobility. Thank you very much.
Hello, thank you for sharing your histories. First question, you look so comfortable in Germany. I would like to know if you are thinking in return to Nigeria sometimes, and also what was the climate or environmental context that sent you to Germany? And another question for Kato. I think that the situation of Tuvalu is, I don't know, but if the context of the seas are like now, your island is going to disappear. I don't know, but what do you think about you and your family and your friends? What are thinking you about? You are working for change the situation and use new technologies or something to change the history, or you have another option and you are thinking also in going out? Sorry for the English, but
Thank you very much. So maybe I'll pass from Chamaka, and then we come here, and then Sarah, maybe you can say a few words in conclusion of the whole week, in fact, just about the Global Center of Climate Mobility in response to the lady. Chamaka?
Hello. Yes. First of all, I grew up in Lagos, Nigeria. It's dealing with rising sea levels, flooding, heat waves, basically weather extremities, and of course that causes displacement in some cases. But for me in particular, I didn't leave Nigeria because of climate related events. I left to further my studies, and so I went to Germany to do my master's studies, and recently I started my doctoral studies. And of course, I am driven in this quest for justice, climate action, all the knowledges that I'm gaining. I hope to one day go back home and help in building my country, in responding to these issues. And so I, in the meantime, try to go home every year to see my family, but then ultimately to support my country, obviously. I just thought to highlight that. So there were two questions that you asked. Number one, if I plan to go home, and I do go home every year, and ultimately all these knowledges, all these connections, all this passion, I hope to contribute to my country ultimately. And the second, I tried to expand on the climate issues. We deal with some of them, but they did not directly influence my migration decision. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for the question. It's going to be very hard for me to say this. You know, it's gonna be very, very hard for the Tuvaluan people to think about, you know, Tuvalu is disappearing. God forbid. But locals have done community adaptation, coastal adaptation mini project that doesn't need funding, that we can do ourselves. One of it is collecting coconut trees, like the bodies, to protect our shorelines. We line them up to our shorelines, and those coconut trees are still there. They're protecting our shorelines. Two is us youth coming together and plant mangroves, so that things about mangroves is that they hold the sand of it. From my experience, they've been holding sands since when did we start planting, like 12 years ago. That those sands, hurricane comes, those sands are still there. So we knew those projects were successful. Another project that the government's been doing is reclamation land, and this was funded by UNDP, Australia, and Taiwan. So there were 3 reclamation land that was done. One was done in 2019, and it's still there. Recently just finished phase 2 with reclamation land. It's at the south side of the island, funded by Australia. It's around like 800 meters long to the sea. So where the sea was is now land. And it's one of the, I see that it's really important, and also see that the Tuvaluan people are very strong of not moving at all. Another project, in phase 3 is at the other side doing a reclamation land, and this is the place where we always get affected by strong wind and sea level rise. When the waves hits the island, it throws rocks onto the land and destroys the homes and community that lives there. And then with this project, it protects the communities there, because now it's further away from the homes. And just in case, God forbid, just in case, there is a treaty that Tuvalu and Australia did. It's called the Falipili Treaty. It's not a climate visa. A lot of people have been asking me to interview about this climate visa, but it's not a climate visa. Meaning Tuvalu moving to Australia, Falipili means neighbor. Neighbor in relationship in Tuvalu. Neighbor, we give you things, you give us things. I come to your home, you come to my home. It doesn't mean that I come to your house and stay there forever. I come to your home and I come back home. In the perspective of youth and elders, this Falipili is not a climate visa. This is an opportunity for our young people. We go to Australia, we have access to education, to hospitals, and then after that, we come back home and invest in our country. So this is what the feeling of, like wanting to stay home, not wanting to migrate or not moving away from home. But so in Tuvalu, we have a lot of culture, and I'm still learning a lot of, even though I'm Tuvalu, but I'm still learning about Tuvaluan culture, to be honest. And one amazing thing about it is music. So thank you very much.
Jan, I know there was no direct question to you, but is there maybe one takeaway message that you would like everybody to leave on the psychology of climate change and climate mobility?
Thank you very much. I think I would like to connect with what was already shared, that in the end these stories, they have the idea to really enhance and strengthen the community well-being. So I think we should always have this intention in mind. Why do we tell a story? What is our goal? And I think it's very much about strengthened stories that put together the agency and the decision, the choice of the local communities.
Thank you. And maybe you want to say a few words, Sarah?
Thank you. I can respond to the question that was asked about who we are. And Actually, we've been to Uganda a few times and have done work there. So the Global Center for Climate Mobility, we're a relatively new entity. You will have found us at the last 4 COPs. So we started in Sharm el-Sheikh. We're a partnership of governments, UN, philanthropy, academia, civil society, coming together to do analysis. So we look at what is the data and evidence connecting climate change to the movement of people. How can we produce data that can be useful for government planning? We work on policy with governments to see how can this issue be part of their national adaptation plans, their other policies that national governments use also to attract financing. So we want to unlock finance for the communities that are most affected by the impacts of climate change. We have a fund dedicated to giving grants to communities in the countries that we work with to fill some of the gaps in the existing climate finance system, where we know they take a long time to give out money, and we're trying to have quick impact in some of the areas where communities already know what they need. It's just that there's nothing available that's quick without a lot of bureaucracy for them to meet that need. So we're trying to fill that gap. And we have, and Andrea heads this, we have a Climate Mobility Academy. So a lot of the young fellows that you see here, they're supported by the Academy, where we provide training, we connect them, we want to support their career pathways in this space and make sure that young people aren't just kind of advocating, but really also find a professional path in this field. So that are some of the things that we do. And then importantly, why are we hosting things at COP here? Because we do want to create a global movement. We want to build a global coalition of countries from all regions, but not just governments, also civil society, academia, private sector, grassroots, to put this issue on the agenda, not just here at COP, but to create an agenda that can bring the different angles, the climate policy angle, but also the development people, the migration policy people, because there's a lot of people that need to come together to address this issue. So that's our agenda. Welcome to our house. It's actually Tuvalu's house, and so we have to thank them for hosting us here. We've been closely partnered with them, and they kindly offered to partner with us to have this gorgeous pavilion right across from all the power players. So thank you so much for being with us this week. It's been a great pleasure, and we're still open next week. We'll open this space to others hosting events, so it won't be us necessarily in the driver's seat, but we had a lot of applications by organizations that want to host events here in the space. So next week we'll have a full program of different organizations hosting events here. So if you're still at COP, please come back and check it out, and leave your contact with us, and we'll be happy to add you also to our mailing list. Thank you, everybody, and thank you to the panel for joining us. Yeah, and we'll take a picture. Who wants to join can join us on stage.